Dude, Von Miller won the first. He was a first team All American in college twice, and won the. We went to the Pro Bowl every single season that he played over 9 games in the league. Of course, Von Miller is elite. He's made 7 All Pro teams in the 9 seasons he's been in the NFL. Yes, Von Miller is an elite player. Von Miller has a Super Bowl MVP as a defensive end when Peyton Manning was on his team. Yes, Von Miller is elite. How we doing? It is Saturday, July 18th, 2020, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and for this edition of The Elite, for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do a piece on Von Miller, who is a 31-year-old defensive end slash outside linebacker who plays for the Denver Broncos. He currently stands at about 6'3", 250 pounds, and if you see him play, you see how technical he is. He's very, very strong. He's very, very fast. He understands offensive schemes incredibly well. He basically plays with offensive linemen for the entire game. He always gets incredibly close, but once or twice a game he'll make a big play, which is what he gets paid all this money to do, and he's been able to do it ever since he's played football. He's been able to get to the quarterback very, very consistently. And because of his consistency, I consider him one of the greats. And I already know that as of right now, if he were to retire, he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. But just to give you a little bit of background, like I said, he's from Dallas, Texas. He went to DeSoto High School. Of course, everyone knows DeSoto High School. From right there, he was recruited to go play at Texas A&M. And of course, his first year, he went on to play as a freshman. He played 9 games, finishing with 22 total tackles, like probably 2 sacks on the season in that year. They would finish up with a 7-6 record with Dennis Franchione as the coach that season. His sophomore year, he got to play more, and I think he started, and in the 12 games that he played, he finished with 44 total tackles, as the Texas A&M finished 4-8 on the season. But his next 2 seasons, he was an All-American, because his junior year, he finished playing all 13 games with 47 total tackles, 21 of them for loss, and 17 sacks. As a junior, he could have gone pro. He even forced 4 fumbles that year. He could have gone pro, but he decided to go back to Texas A&M for his senior year, play all 13 games, and instead of going out on a losing record, 6-7 that they did his junior year, he went out on a 9-4 record, as they lost in the Cotton Bowl after being a ranked team in that year. And as a senior, Von Miller finished with 68 total tackles on the season, with 17.5 total tackles for loss and 10.5 sacks, which is a lot less than 17. But at that point, Von Miller had shown that he was one of the top players in all of college football, and he had earned the Dick Butkus Award. He was apparently a good enough prospect to be taken 2nd overall in the 2011 draft, behind Cam Newton, of all people, to the Denver Broncos. And ever since then, his career has been history. His first season there, he was a Pro Bowler, as he played all 15 games in a season where the Broncos ended up 8-8, winning the AFC West. They beat the Steelers in overtime. That was when Tim Tebow won on that 1 touchdown pass to Demaryius Thomas. They ended up losing in the divisional round to the Patriots that year. But Von Miller was eventually awarded the Defensive Rookie of the Year after putting up 64 total tackles and 11.5 sacks on the season, 19 tackles for losses. But that was what he did. That was his rookie year. His rookie year, he had earned the Pro Bowl nod, and he was already recognized as one of the league's top defensive ends in his rookie season, which is something you don't see a lot of players doing. His second year in the league, at 23, he started all 16 games in a season where the Broncos finished 13-3 after winning the AFC West, and they finished first in the AFC. But they ended up losing to the Ravens in double overtime in the divisional playoffs. But Peyton Manning was the comeback player of the year. That was the year that he was officially back on the Broncos, the year that he came back from his injury, and right after they got Andrew Luck. So moving on to the 2013 season, going back to the 2012 season, I'm sorry. He went on to start all 16 games, where he had an interception on the season, a pick 6. He finished with 6 forced fumbles on the year, 18.5 sacks on the season out of his 68 combined tackles. 28 of them were tackles for loss. He had 18.5 sacks in his second year in the league. He was named an All-Pro linebacker, and he was named a Pro Bowler in his second year. And by his age 24 season, he was recognized as, if not the best, the other best one of the top three linebackers in all of football in his second year of playing. And that had shown what his impact was on the Broncos that season. In 2013, he would only start in 9 seasons, in a season where the Broncos, where they finished 13-3, and they've ended up making it all the way to the Super Bowl and losing to the Seahawks 43-8 after Peyton Manning won the MVP and the Offensive Player of the Year. Going back to Von Miller, he would only play 9 games that season, and he would still get a touchdown on a fumble recovery, and he still finished with 35 combined tackles. But after that was his third year in the league, and that was the only season in his career in which he didn't make a Pro Bowl. Moving on to his age 25 season, and by that point, Von Miller, after his season, which only played 9 games, he had already established himself as one of the best defensive linemen, best linebackers when healthy, and he had been a part of a team that had established itself as a title contender in 2020. In 2014, his age 25 season, he would go on to start all 16 games in a season where the Broncos would end up finishing first in the AFC West. And they lost in the divisional round to the Colts. They lost 24-13. Von Miller this season would finish with starting all 16 games, like I just said. He finished with 60 combined tackles on the season, 16 for loss. He would finish with 14 sacks on the season, once again going back up to what the league was used to before. And he had been named a Pro Bowler for the 3rd time in his first 4 seasons in the league, and that pretty much continued on to the next season. In 2015, which might go down as probably one of his most memorable seasons to date, he started all 16 games and all through the playoffs in a season where the Denver Broncos beat the Steelers in the first round. They beat the Patriots by 2 in the AFC Championship. They went on to beat the Panthers, led by Cam Newton, who at that time had only lost 1 game in the season to their season rival, to their division rivals, the Atlanta Falcons. They won 24-10. And Von Miller was named the Super Bowl MVP after the Broncos defense quite literally shut down the Panthers. It shut down the MVP, and Von Miller was the main guy that year. He was actually named a Super Bowl MVP. And that season, he would go on to finish the regular season with 4 forced fumbles. He finished with 35 total tackles on the season, 9 for loss. He finished with 11 sacks on the season, and he was named as a first-team All-Pro for the 2nd time in his career. And up by then, at that point, by the end of that, by the time he was 27, going into his age 27 year, he had played 5 years in the football in the NFL after playing 3 years after playing all 4 years of college ball. He has 2 first-team All-Pros. He has 2 second-team All-Pros. And the 1 year he didn't earn them, he was hurt. He didn't play that year. At that point, he's not only is he the champion of Super Bowl, was he a member of the champion team of Super Bowl 50, he was the Super Bowl MVP. So, I mean, just to add on all that is his career 5 years in by the time he's 27. Even continue that. The next year, he went back-to-back and won yet another All-Pro award, recognized him as the best linebacker and was one of the best linebackers in football. That season, he started all 16 games, while the Broncos finished with the 3rd best record in the AFC West at 9-7. But Von Miller still put in the work with 78 total tackles on the season, 13 tackles for losses, 13.5 sacks on the season. Von Miller was most definitely coming up big for the Broncos, even though they didn't make the playoffs. This was still a guy coming off the season after he won the MVP, and this is probably Peyton. That was either Peyton's last year or the year after Peyton retired. Not completely sure, but once again, this is his third. This is the 3rd time he was named to the first team All-Pro in his first 6 seasons in the league. That's half of his first 6 seasons, he was recognized as one of the two best players at his position. And then going into his age 28 season in 2017, he started all 16 games in a season where the Broncos finished 5-11. They finished last in the AFC West. But that season, he still finished with 57 combined tackles and 10 sacks on the season. And yeah, that's his fourth Pro Bowl in a row and his sixth in the last 7. His next 2 seasons would kind of be the same, as the Broncos didn't make the playoffs. They haven't made the playoffs since they've won the Super Bowl, ironically. But Von Miller has still really been that guy. In 2018, he put up 14 and a half sacks. This past season, in his age 30 season, he put up 8 sacks. And up until then, if you look at Von Miller right now as a 31-year-old outside linebacker, you look at his resume, you see that he's been first team All-American twice out of Texas A&M. He was drafted number 2 overall for how good he was in college. He was a defensive rookie of the year. He has 8 Pro Bowls. He was named to the NFL second team 4 times. He was named to the first team 3 times. And not only is he a Super Bowl champion, he's a Super Bowl MVP. And the Broncos as a team, as they've fallen off the past couple of years, but Von Miller has still been that dude. And to me, I think he's missing a couple of Defensive Player of the Years for me to solidify him as a GOAT, like Aaron Donald. But to me, Von Miller is an all-time great. I'm going to look back and remember Von Miller is one of the best players of the 2010s. He was even recognized and named to the All-Decade team. But, I mean, if you're asking me right now in 2020 if Von Miller's still elite, I mean, yes, he's made the last 7 Pro Bowls, or the last 6 Pro Bowls. And depending on we'll see if the Broncos do well, but I know for a fact Von Miller is going to do well. And if you ever get a chance to watch him, just peep my boy. He's wearing number 58 for the Denver Broncos. Just ask yourself, I mean, like, are there really that many other players in football that can do his job better than he can? And no, there most definitely are not, which is why he consistently wins the award time in, time out. I mean, how many good defensive ends, like Pro Bowl defensive ends, that actually like won the Super Bowl? Like really, 3-time All-Pro. Like that's not a mistake. That's not a fluke. And with all that, I think I'm gonna say for the last time, Von Miller is an elite outside linebacker. And I've said my piece. Without further ado, peace out.